Well, hello, hello, hello. It is Tuesday, the 17th of June. Please note that I had a look down at the phone and know what date it was. It is late or early evening, maybe early evening on Tuesday, the 17th of June. And this is Getting to the Core podcast. If you asked me what episode it is, I wouldn't be able to tell you. So I'm assuming that if you've come to this podcast, you know more than I do. So you're incredibly welcome. This podcast is gorgeous. It has been a long time in the making, and I'm delighted to have Ali in front of me. I will get her to introduce herself in a wee minute. But what we are about to talk about is something that is so important, especially in the world of healing, and especially when it comes to all of the different aspects of healing or modalities of healing that are out there. And this podcast is really about bringing the body into the spiritual aspect of healing, bringing the body into the spiritual aspect of ourselves in relation to healing. So it's kind of we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. And can the two things coexist together? Can the spirit and the body, can spirituality and the human condition of the body exist together in a way that is incredibly fruitful and beneficial on your healing journey? So, this podcast is going to be really good for anybody that has been on a spiritual journey, maybe somebody that has been using the non-dual principles, um, uh, and that has tried to be uh, away from the body, away from the woundedness, and towards oneness, for want of a better phrase. And how can we integrate the two? So podcast will be for you if that has been your journey and you have been burdened with the joys of being human. You have been burdened by the woundedness, and despite all of your practices and your spiritual practices, not to throw the baby out with the bathwater, because we're delighted with spiritual practices, but despite all of those practices, you haven't actually been able to work in the depth of the pain. So that's what this podcast is fundamentally about. So you've heard enough about me and you've heard enough from me. I am a novice when it comes to spirituality, let me say that. So I am going to use this podcast to educate myself. So I'm going to ask all the questions on your behalf. Ali is not a novice. She's been through very many trainings in this field, in this uh, aspect of the field, if you like. I am going to hand over to Ali and I'm going to ask Ali to introduce herself to you, and then we will begin from there. Ali, tell us a little bit about yourself and how we came to be.
Absolutely. So yeah, I'm Ali, and I have basically been in the field of coaching and therapy and client related work for probably about 20 years now.
You don't look 20, Ali. How can you? Anyway.
You. But I started out actually in nutritional medicine and then very quickly realized that nobody wanted to actually change their diet. And it was much more a mental, emotional kind of thing that was going on for most people. So I then trained in cognitive hypnotherapy, was my first kind of foray into the world of healing and therapy, I guess, which was beautiful, beautiful work. But there was always something in me that kept me going for something else. And at the time, I wasn't sure if it was just another bright, shiny thing that I was looking for or what was going on, you know? So I kind of, from there, I had a whole journey over the last, decades and a half, really, or more, of all these different forms of coaching and therapeutic type interventions. And that took me through something called the three principles, which some listeners may have heard of. It's a kind of niche area in some ways, but it's getting bigger. And that's a very spiritual form of coaching. And then I kind of from there moved on to more exploration in non-duality, which is again quite a niche form of of this kind of work, but a lot of people will have now heard of that too. But all through this time, and lots of different things in between, I studied breath work, I've studied mindfulness, I studied meditation, and I trained in all of these. I'm a meditation practitioner, breath work facilitator, and all the way through just kind of going, but that's not quite it. But that's not quite it. That doesn't do everything that I want it to do. That's touching this, but I don't know. It never really kind of did what I wanted it to do. So I'll talk more about the spirituality side, I'm sure, as we go through this, but to sum this little introduction up, I then came across the clearing method, which I know now is now called INCORE. I'm going to say that wrong the whole way through this.
That's okay. We are going to use the word clearing and INCORE interchangeably.
Okay.
That's fine, don't worry.
And as soon as I came across it, and it was a very serendipitous way that I came across yourself, Shauna, because I'd seen something pop up of you and it just kind of piqued my interest. And I think at the same time, a friend and colleague of mine, Hugh Osborne, had also written something about you. And it was almost like the same day or very close by. And I thought, oh, that's a sign. I need to, I need to look into this more kind of deeply. And that started the journey with yourself. And so I've went through emotional mastery, the level 1 training. I went through the anxiety and panic program, and then went through just more recently the whole INCORE clearing program.
Yeah. Brilliant. And that's, I suppose, where we're up to now.
Yes.
And if I can say this, if you don't mind, I am aware that you did some of your own inner work alongside this journey as well.
Absolutely. So for me, the reason why I got into all of this work, which I guess most people end up really is the reason they get into it, was my own journey, was my own sense of pain, was my own sense of just not being able to feel good in the world, not being able to fully relax and have peace, not being able to fully enjoy relationships, not being able to just fully be how I wanted to be. I knew there was something, that was kind of
funny because you said that in relation to the spirituality seeking and the many modalities. It's not quite that, it's not quite that, it's not quite that. So there was obviously something in me that was searching for something.
Definitely a seeker, definitely searching. And it wouldn't let me stop. And at the time, I thought I was just being a bit flaky by moving from one thing to the next. But now I can see, no, that wasn't what was happening. It was all part of the journey. I don't regret any of the things I've studied and learned and the people I've met. But yeah, so I decided that for this, I wanted to do the INCORE kind of as a whole thing for me too. Like, it's probably started with me. I wanted to embody it myself so that I could then really, I do believe you can only meet people as deeply as you've gone yourself. And there's more for me to do, Shauna. There's more for me to do.
Of course, there's more for all of us to do. I think that's important to say, but I want to take you back a little bit because I think there'll be very many people listening to this, and what you've just said is important. I was seeking, and at the time I thought I was seeking, this is a paraphrasing of what you're saying. I was seeking, and at the time I thought I was seeking just that kind of bright, shiny object, but it wasn't. I was seeking an answer that you didn't necessarily know that you needed.
Yes.
And I think most people on a healing journey are seeking.
Yeah, for sure.
And they're trying their best.
Mm.
And they're really trying to come to some understanding of themselves or some healing of themselves that will give them, you said it beautifully, ease in the world and ease in relationship and ease of self. And that's very broad strokes, but I think that's what leads us to all of these things.
Yeah, we're just aware that things aren't how we want them to be, right? In whatever way that shows up.
Yeah, but I think that's really important because I think what happens is, I think we can tend to, and I've seen this over the years in clinical practice, I think we can tend to rubbish our journey, our steps.
Mm.
And I don't think that's fair either, because each step leads you closer to the fundamental, what we call primary pain. And we'll talk about that in a wee minute. But each step does lead you, and without that step, you couldn't be in this step.
Absolutely. And I really see that now, like looking back, there's no regret. There's no, I mean, there's a little bit. Sometimes I think all the money and time I've spent, I'd probably never need to work again, Sean, if I could recoup it all, But, and I don't regret any of it. I think it's all beautiful. And actually, for me, coming into INCORE with the non-dual understanding has been something else. Like, I think that's really, and I think for me, I mean, people come into your world from all different walks and different therapeutic paths, if you like. But I'm really glad that I came in from that path, not because I think it's better than anyone else, just because for me it gives a context to hold this within.
Okay,
It's
so back up a little bit, because for the listeners, there are going to be people who understand non-dual, and there's going to be people that understand what we mean by spirituality. But
mm,
considering you're the expert in the room in relation to that, tell us what you mean by non-dual. Help me understand that. Help me understand non-dual.
I say, we say I'm the expert, but I wouldn't consider myself that. But with, my understanding of non-duality is essentially at its core the idea that everything's one. There's
Okay.
one thing going on. There's no separation between anything, and everything is essentially there's a oneness. Oneness is a big, obviously, a concept in spirituality generally, right? So there's a oneness to everything, and that aspect of it, I don't have a problem with the truth of that, the conceptual truth of that. That feels okay to me. That feels real to me. That felt beautiful to me in many ways. But what it seemed to start to do when it came to people healing, for me, the concept of non-duality and everything's perfect exactly as it is, and everything's working out. There's truth in it, but it's not the truth.
Yes.
Truth in the fact that we're all one, but it's not the truth,
Yes. Yes, there's truth in the fact that we're all interconnected, but it's
Mm.
not the only truth.
Yes, and that's the thing. And I think when it gets taken into the only truth, it's it's not fair, because what it does is take away something big from people who need to heal. And what I saw in that world was a lot of bypassing, a lot of beauty, Shauna. We talked about not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. I don't want to do that. I'm not going to rubbish any of it, because
Absolutely not.
it's not rubbish, but it's not complete. It's an incomplete equation.
But I
And
love that. That is so soothing, because often primary pain shame based.
mm, yes,
And if you've lived in shame, and if you've lived in ridicule, and if you've lived in less than this, and if you've whatever your version of primary pain is, then it is so easy to have taken any of this spiritual journey and then use it to beat yourself over the head with.
that is such an important point, and I'm so glad you said it, because that is it exactly. What happens along this spiritual journey for a lot of people is that they feel worse about themselves, because not only do they have this pain that we'll talk about more, the primary pain that they don't even necessarily know they have, but they know they don't feel good. They know there's something going on. They know they've got feelings they don't like. They know they've got actions in the world they don't like, but they're told not to worry about that, essentially. They're told that that is kind of not true, not real. And on one level, it isn't. But on the level that matters in the human experience of that particular person, it's like their reality is just being denied. It's
And there's two things in that, right? So let's split that up. So the first thing is, in the experience that we're having, in this human experience, in this body led human experience that we have, there is pain. And there is often, we can talk about limbic memory, and we can talk about, when I say pain, we're talking about deeply rooted pain in the body, um, where the body has somatic pain, the body has emotional pain, and there's this body of pain, if you like. And what you're saying there is, if I am to approach this from a non-dual perspective, then I can look at that pain and say it's not real.
yes.
That creates state change within me. It creates a way to move away from the pain, not be
Mhm.
connected to it, not belong to it, not be attached to it, if you like,
Mhm.
and move to a state in me closer to the idea of oneness, closer to the idea of completeness, closer to the idea of
Wholeness, yeah, yeah.
oneness. And that is a lovely regulatory thing.
Mm. Yes,
It helps
absolutely.
us.
And for me, so my journey, my personal journey with this, I came into all of this world through huge anxiety, panic
Oh.
attacks, life-ending feelings of terror, the real stuff of
Mm.
nightmare that I wouldn't wish on my, worst enemy. And so for me, when I first understood the concept of wholeness and oneness, it did help to regulate. It did help to regulate. It gave me something. It gave me, like, I guess what I'd call a safety net somehow. It
Oh,
gave me,
yeah.
oh, there's something bigger than this pain. There's something that contains all of this pain. There's something that, and that was beautiful, Shauna. I'm not going to lie. There was something so
Sure.
amazing for me in there. And I was like, oh, that's good. But then that wasn't the end. That
No,
wasn't the healing of
no,
it. That
no.
wasn't the, it helped a lot. It helps a lot. It gave me something to breathe out into.
Yeah. And that's the second point that you make. The first
Mm.
point that you've made just then is that it's regulatory, it's resourcing, it's helpful. And you could not deny that it's not.
Mm.
You cannot deny that it's not. And any help that we get has to be better than no help, has to be better than being in the pain. The other point that you make is when we continue to avoid the
Mm.
pain in which it is arising from,
Mm.
that's bypassing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's a regulatory part of it and a bypassing part of it, and the two of them go hand in hand, and that's the difficulty.
I, yeah, that's it completely. And, there are some people who do really seem to have taken their spiritual understanding and their non-dual understanding, and it seems like maybe they have transcended things. Maybe there are some
Yeah,
enlightened masters, right? I'm not denying that either. I'm not saying any of it's not possible. I just think for me, in my experience, from my clients, for the great majority of people in the community that I have been involved with over the years, that's not the case.
yeah. Because what we know about the body
Mm.
is that it contains within it the the emotional memories of the past.
Mm. Yeah.
And I would need if I was, I never tried this. This wasn't my shtick at all. As I said, I openly say I understand the principles, but I would struggle to articulate them because I don't really. You know what they say, you only teach what you know. Well, this is what I
Mm.
don't know, so I would never profess to know it. But that wasn't for me. I was aware of the body, and I was too aware of the body. I was too embodied to the body, and to be able to stay away from that pain would have required me to stay in oneness constantly.
This is it. And this is the problem. And so if you're not able to be in oneness constantly, which let's face it, is pretty hard unless you're living possibly in a cave on your
With
own,
no children and no
no children and no
teenagers,
actual life and
and
no stress. And
yeah, and no work and no partner and
yeah,
no, yeah, all of that, like, and an infinite supply of money.
exactly. With all
Yes,
of that, maybe that would work.
yeah.
And again, I don't deny there are people out there who I would love to still hear from and listen to who have
Mm,
found that peace, whatever. But this is what I found as well. And what I find is, there's a lot of in the three principles teaching, there's a lot of kind of the idea that thoughts create your reality. So your thinking comes first, and that creates your emotions, and that creates your reality. And that, even when I was in it, I was like, I just don't feel that that's how it works. I just don't. But I was in it, and I was surrounded by it, and I was like, well, maybe I am wrong then. Maybe I have got it wrong. And when you're the kind of person that has any kind of primary pain or wounding, like most of the population, then you're vulnerable in a way to these messages and these thoughts and these, maybe I've got it wrong. Maybe I'm the one who's seeking after all. So maybe that's right. But that never set well with me. I always felt like surely it starts in my body and then it loops up,
yeah,
you know.
yeah, yeah. But isn't that so important, right? Because if it begins in my head, then I have got control.
Mm, mm. And then
Because
you're told that, so this point I was kind of coming to with that is then you're told that, you're told non-duality will tell you that you're not the body. Okay, that's the ultimate. And there's some teachers that profess that so strongly. And ultimately that's true. At the God level, I'm not religious in the traditional sense, but at the God level, that's true. I believe that we are, temporarily inhabiting a human body. Now, that's not everyone's belief, and that's fine too. But it doesn't really matter. I feel like a lot of people share that understanding to some level, that you see when a body dies, something goes,
yeah,
something that was animating the body is now no longer there. So it's gone, right? It's gone somewhere. So that kind of makes sense to me. We are not the body in our truest essence. But for this human experience, Shauna, as we've talked about, we are very much the body. We cannot deny this physical reality. When I do this too hard, I feel pain. You
yeah.
know, it if I get my finger chopped off, it's going to hurt me. There's no denying of the
If
body.
you live in a narcissistic family environment that has ACEs, then you are going to have
Yeah.
are going
We
to have embodied memory.
Yeah, and I don't know as much of the science of this as you do, Shauna, because I know I'm not as interested in the actual science. I like it, but that's not my vibe. But I love that you're doing that. But you know, the limbic system, there's proof now, there's scientific proof that these things, you know, I heard something you were saying the other day, and I won't remember it well, but it was like the proof of limbic reconsolidation, and you know, and there's so yeah, our environment has a massive impact on our nervous system. And the body is beautiful, isn't it? In that way, the nervous system is so beautifully, wonderfully protective of us and so amazing in the way it works. It's always working for us, but it will have these things stored within it. And then when we're saying to someone, you know, you are not the body, you are not the body, it's very dissociative. I had one client not so long ago who came to me coming fresh out of this spiritual world, and she'd been told so much that she wasn't the body, that she was up here. I'm putting my hand in the air for those that need to know what I'm doing. She wasn't in her body. She was so dissociated from her body, and for her to go into the body was so scary because that's where it all was. And she would repeat to herself, Shauna, over and over again when she was feeling anxious, I'm not the body, I'm not the body, I'm not the body. And my heart just broke for her in that moment because like that's not helping.
And the reality of it as well is that where are the answers?
Yeah,
The answers are in the body.
body,
When you
exactly.
deny the body,
Yeah,
when you deny the body in favor of the spirit or in favor of the oneness,
yeah.
you're denying the very vessel that can actually set you free.
I absolutely agree. And I think the problem that I've seen in the world of this is that the kind of spiritual teachers and schools and collectives, they see kind of trauma work, if you like, as going and giving life to something that
Yes.
doesn't need to give life to, you know, that doesn't want to be, that you're going in and kind of like creating more problems in a way. But that's because I don't think that the in-core method is actually understood by hardly anyone anyway. And because it's not just that, it's not that, you know, this is the thing. And I think it's not that we're just going in, you know, and they would call it that we're doing too much sort of selfing, that we're being too involved in the body, we're being too involved in the narrowness of the human experience in a way. And to a certain extent, again, I can see what they're saying. I can see that there's an element where if we focus too much on all of the trauma, then, you know, at the expense of everything else, that's not necessarily going to serve us. But that's not what this method does.
And I understand that principle if
Mm,
you're endlessly searching for the what is wrong.
yes,
If you're, because that is often the all other experience of
exactly,
and
exactly.
I understand that. I can understand their difficulty and don't go near the body because you'll be there for a lifetime and don't go near certainly don't go near the mind for answers because you
Mm.
will be there for a lifetime.
And yeah, and that's true. Like we know this with the mind. There are some mind-based therapy, and the mind will go on forever. The mind has infinite branches and infinite labyrinths of whatever doesn't. You'll never get an answer from the mind.
Never. So in that respect, then we understand that don't go in there because you'll not come back out with the answers, and you know don't go near the human condition because if you go to the human condition, you'll not come out with the answers.
Yeah,
That's where we say we're different. You know, and course different is well, if you go to the body and you go to the human conditions, then there is a way to access that quite carefully without it being a 25-year process, without it
exactly.
being a continual process. So we can have all of this nuanced
Yeah,
understanding and it not be again not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
absolutely. And I think this is just a key point through that is that what I see about the work that you do and that I now do is that it's a way to essence, it's a way to truth.
Yes,
So
yes,
not the spiritual community, and maybe that's not even the right word anymore, but the non-dual community, the three principles community, they're all really talking about who we really are, who
yes.
we really are at our essence, at our truest self. I'm down with that, Shorter. Like that's cool with me. And I know you are too. And I know you, I mean, the word essence that I kind of picked up from you, which I love, I think it's beautiful. But to me, it's like in the spiritual world, there's like the separation from your true self essence and then sort of from the body and everything else. And it's this idea that we should live from true self, and that's the aim, and it's a beautiful aim, don't get me wrong. But people can't do that because all this nervous system shit is in the way of that.
And not only just the nervous system shit, you know, to borrow your phrase, but also the embodied emotional somatic pain is in the way. And that layers on top of the somatics. And
Yeah.
that's what causes the pain. And that's what causes the turmoil. And that's what causes the behaviors. And that's what causes the relationship issues.
Mm,
And so
yeah.
to deny that and to stay in oneness,
Mm.
and oneness, I think, is different than essence, which
We
we'll
can,
talk about.
yeah.
We can talk about, you know, is for me is, you know, it's so difficult to separate them out. What happens if they're all in the one place?
This
Which
is
is
the
what,
thing.
which is
Yeah.
what we're trying to do, basically, and try to
Like so that totality of the whole entire embodied experience is absolutely huge, and it's completely being denied, and that's the thing. And yeah, and to me, like going through like in core, going through clearing, that's the thing that can help kind of eventually heal and clear the way for essence to shine
Yes.
through.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because
Yeah.
that's, and then we'll talk about your experience of that clearing and that essence that comes. So let me give a little bit to our listeners. Most of you have listened to this podcast for a lifetime and understand the methodology of clearing or encore. But what we're fundamentally talking about is working in primary pain in a way that can move that, can reconsolidate that, can move it through the body, can dispel of it, can heal it, can clear it, whatever language you want. What happens in that is that when that energy is out of the body, and all of the ways in which we've used that energy, all of the products, all of the secondary pain, then what is left is that we have much more capacity to be
Mm.
closer to that was given in essence. What does that mean? I often say words like the seed of the soul. The seed of the soul. What were we born into this uniqueness to be? Who are we at our, and I've never worked with a human being and never seen the same pattern of essence ever in my days.
Mm.
Carl Rogers talked about it when he talked about the real self. You know, so we have a deep history in psychology of understanding the principle of the real self.
Mm.
And so I've seen it 100,000 times. The wound uncovers the real self.
Mm.
In the working in the body, we get to uncover the authentic essence that then can be closer to oneness. But you can't have the one without the other.
No, I agree, and I think that's so important and so beautiful, and sometimes what's overlooked in again the kind of spiritual understanding sometimes, because like you say, I see essence differently to oneness, and there's kind of the true self. There's all these different words and language around it all, but it feels to me that there is oneness, but we as each individual being are a fractal of that oneness, a kind of
Beautiful. That's
uh, and we
gorgeous.
have our own flavor of
Yes.
well, we have our, and like you say, you've been working in this way for so long and you haven't ever seen two essences the same. Like we do have our own unique thing that we are, and I don't like the word purpose really, actually, Shauna, I don't like that, but but we have our own flavor to bring in the world. We have our own gift, our own shining, our own, whatever to bring. And
Well,
that
go ahead. No, go ahead.
yeah, and I think that is when we are closest. So that's when, like say, the essence. It's almost like we have the wounding, that's kind of in the way or covering up or on top of the essence, which is then very close to like the oneness, the true
Yes.
self.
Yes, that's exactly. It's funny.
Mm.
You and I have had many conversations, but that's the first conversation that we've had in the connection to the
Mm.
spirituality
Mm.
and the spiritual field or the
Yeah.
spiritual whatever that's called.
And I still love that exploration, Shauna. Like I'm not involved in it like I was, but I still love the oneness stuff, you know. I think
Absolutely.
it's beautiful. I still love the idea of kind of that capacity building that you talked about, that the more we kind of see that we're not just confined to the limitations of the body, there's a capacity that's built even in that. So I love the way that it
You,
gives a
you
capacity.
think about this, right? You think about somebody that has a wound,
Mm.
and that wound is not enoughness.
Mm.
and they're unaware, well, they are aware of the wound, which is what the seeking is about, but they're unaware of the flavor of it, the embodiment of it, the totality of it, its origins. So that part gets kind of, if you like, annexed off. And then in spiritual practices, they get closer to they have practice of being in oneness and the feeling of oneness and the experience in the body, the energetic experience in the body of oneness is expansion.
Yes.
The energetic experience in the body of oneness is greatness. It is wonder.
Yeah.
It is beauty. It is, and all of that has a direct opposite of the wound. And so that oneness in its first instance is preparing the body for the opposite of the information. So let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. So you use the word anchoring, you use the word resourcing. So isn't that therefore a gorgeous resource? And maybe for a lot of people who are deep in self-loathing or deep in self-pain, or then it's an opportunity, it's a doorway out.
Yeah.
And how could you ever deny that to anybody?
Absolutely. And then the only problem is when it becomes more painful eventually than it was meant to be. And that's what I see in clients. That's what I see. I see people coming in going, I don't know who I am. I don't know what I am. I'm feeling this human pain, but I'm being told that I'm not the body. And they're disembodied, they're disassociated and disunified. And that's the piece that I think is the missing link.
Yeah, and that's incredible. So what we're doing is we're giving validation to the practices that help us anchor for the very first time outside the wound. And then what we're saying is what that leaves us with is it leaves us with a new set of problems.
Yeah.
Which is, if we are to access the wounding, we must access the wounding through the body. So now what we have to do is come back to the body, which causes a whole load of problems.
Yes, and for people who have been through the kind of spiritual journeying, that can feel so difficult for them.
God, I could
So
imagine.
difficult, you know, to touch, to come back into the body, to acknowledge, to even believe for a while that that's something that's useful for, you know, for them to do, to kind of acknowledge and validate that, and to, because there's such a lot of the spiritual teachings that will be going around in their minds. They'll doubt themselves, they'll question themselves, they already think they're not good enough at the spiritual stuff, so they're already coming in with a even bigger wound sometimes, and you know, and it's a real gentle process of helping them come back into the body, you know, to trust the wisdom of the body, to not bypass that part of them. They can keep all of it. I would never ask anyone to give up anything that they believe is true ever,
Or that it's useful.
or that's useful. Yeah, but
For
it's,
you, Ali, then, your return to the body, what was that like for you? What was that experience like for you?
so for me, I mean, it's an interesting kind of one for me. My journey into all of this was, like I mentioned, was anxiety and panic attacks. Anxiety from a very early age, panic attacks from teenage years, and panic attacks to the extent of thinking I was going to be casted off to a mental institution. You know, like I was literally going to lose contact with reality and everything that I knew and loved, and I was literally going to be insane. It wasn't a physical fear that I had of dropping down dead. It was a mental fear.
Yeah.
But I experienced that obviously in the body. But I just, you know, and I went through cognitive behavioral therapy. I understood about derealization and depersonalization, but nothing made me feel better. You know, nothing worked, nothing helped the anxiety go away. I even took Valium for a while, you know, all of the stuff just to kind of anything. And you'll know, Shauna, you know, with anxiety, you know, it's, if you haven't had it, it's very hard to understand the debilitating nature of it and the life limiting nature of it and the complete way that it overtakes every second of your day.
All your energy, all your thought
All
energy,
of the
all your
energy.
life energy, all your essence energy goes towards keeping you alive. Fundamentally.
Exactly. And there's nothing, and how depressing is that? There's nothing else going on apart from that. And that's what it felt like for quite a long time. And so then, I would drink a lot sometimes to help that, which then didn't help that. I would, I all kinds of seeking, um, hypnotherapy, all kinds of things, but nothing that really brought me back in the body. And so to kind of come back into the body and to start to feel safe, because the body felt like the most unsafe place in the world.
Yes. Yeah, and that is the point. So
Mm,
just stop there. Sorry, but this is really important, right? Because think about trauma, think about attachment, think about attunement, think about all of the stuff that we experience in childhood. When we're alone in that experience, we're
mm,
alone in the body of that experience. So the detachment from the body, not just in disassociation, but in disunity, because we have a distinction between disunity and disassociation,
mm.
is helpful. So then as an adult, if you find a practice that helps you stay out of the body when in fact you should be in the body,
Yep.
and then I can understand, you know, your body is the most unsafe place. So
Yeah.
the spiritual practices would have been gloriously helpful.
Amazing.
Mm.
And because it seemed to temporarily work, right? Like so when I got into the kind of spiritual side of things and the three principles and the idea, which again, like we said, baby bathwater thing, the idea that we are not the body. I mean, I'd say now we are not just the body, would be a better way of even saying it, but we are so much more than the body, but we are the body. We absolutely are the body. And but for me that was brilliant. Oh, I'm not the body. I don't have to worry about the body then. Great. And then the other side with the three principles was kind of the way it had been taught. And again, all these things have got truth at their very essence and core. Like religion has truth at the very essence of it, but it gets somehow bastardized and changed in different ways, in different things, right? But the three principles was the idea that, you know, your thoughts are not your reality. If you're in a panic attack, I'm sorry, there's
Yeah,
no way that helps you.
yeah,
People will disagree with me, and maybe it has helped some people, and I know cases where that seems true, but ultimately it was just a kind of, yes, there's more going on. Yes, I can see there's a bigger context to life. Yes, there's a beautiful spiritual connection between everybody, but I still feel like this
yeah,
a lot of the time, and I don't know what to do about it. And now I feel like I'm even more broken because the one thing that seemed to help at the beginning and it seems to be the thing that I should be doing and understanding hasn't helped as well.
yeah. I love that. And now I'm even more broken
Mm.
because the thing that worked in the beginning is now no longer working. And now there's fundamentally something wrong.
And that was it. And there was already something wrong with me. And now there's something wrong with me that no one can fix.
Oh, wow.
Nothing can fix. Not even God can fix this shit, right?
Oh,
You know,
oh
and
God.
when I say God, I mean the universe, I mean whatever, but it's almost like it's so unfixable. Even when I go up to the highest levels of spirituality and I've had oneness experiences, I've had beautiful unified experiences, great peak experiences, but didn't heal me.
Yeah.
It gave me something amazing.
And so the return to the body and
Mm.
being comfortable being in the body, how difficult was that? And how difficult is that for everybody that has to come back to the body?
It is challenging. It's challenging. I mean, there's a double side to it, I guess, for me, in that it's very, very challenging and very, very difficult. And it has to be done with grace and patience. And patience was never my finest trait, Shauna. So that's another thing I've learned a lot. But, it has to be done very, very carefully and very safely and with a lot of awareness. But I also wanted it. I think I also recognized that
Oh,
that was what was
wow.
needed, you know.
Wow. And so with the resistance came the need, and
Yeah.
that kept pulling you in.
Yeah, it's like I know that I have to listen to my body more. I know, even on that level, right before I knew what it really was, I knew that my body was trying to speak to me. I
That was
knew
very radical, actually, Ali, given all your teaching, given that you were taught to stay away, given it must have been something instinctual pulling you towards that.
absolutely. I had a big, big, big burnout in 2013, like huge burnout to the extent where I was in a wheelchair and
Wow.
where and I had to move in with my in-laws at the time, and the kids were tiny, and I really thought I was going to die, Shauna. I was writing letters to my children, it was that level of fear
Wow.
in me. And that was almost like, to me, the ultimate collapse, the ultimate, we could call it adrenal exhaustion, we could call it whatever, but it felt like the ultimate collapse of everything. And I knew then, I just knew then my body is trying
Oh my Lord,
so
Ali.
hard to get me to see what's going on here. It's put me on the floor.
Oh my God. And the desire then to stay away
Mm.
from hold all of that spiritual teachings and stay away from the body, but the body pulling you to the body and the body actually collapsing.
Yeah, literally collapsing, and me then going, I don't know what to do.
Oh my God.
You
And
know.
so then was that a slow return to the body
Yeah,
and
I
letting
think
go?
from there, really, that was a slow return. And I think even though then I was still involved in the non-dual teaching, still involved in the spirituality side of things, I think that's why I didn't stay there. I think that's why essentially, Shauna, I didn't stay in any of these communities. I moved, I met some amazing people, and I went again, it's beautiful, some beautiful communities there, but I didn't ever want to claim that as my own. I didn't want to ever say that's who I am, that's what I do. It just didn't feel right ever. And I think that thing inside that kind of knew the body had more, I just knew it on some level by that point, and I was probably trying to still deny it as well. um, you know,
Yeah, because I think that's gorgeous for anybody that's listening. You can know it, but still deny it. Be
mm,
pulled, but still push back.
yeah,
Driven
so
towards, but still
much
go back.
resistance.
There is the duality
Yeah,
of it,
yeah,
of the process. Like that is the reality of the psyche and the body. The answers are here, but I shouldn't be here because it's too difficult. And I'm going to, and the way that we must then as practitioners, and I'm talking as practitioners now, do that softly and gently and without rupture and without re-traumatization. I didn't have the luxury of the push and the pull. When we talk about going back to the body, I just had a child, and then the body was like, well, here I am, remember me, remember
yeah.
the person that you just unified from.
Mm, yeah.
And so I had that real, I didn't have that in out experience. I just had that, hello, we're here and we're in Pandora's box.
Mm,
So I think anybody listening to this, no matter how you keep away from it, whether it's in spirituality or how you keep away, or else positivity, or and
mm,
we've heard people talk about toxic positivity and
mm,
spiritual bypassing, and to a certain extent they'll always have benefit, and then it's up to us then to decide, okay, what do we need that is more, or what is calling us that is, and that's
mm.
what you seem to be saying, you were being called to
I was
something.
definitely being called. And I think that's why when I first heard you speaking and first kind of, I just thought something clicked in me. It just felt like that's the missing piece. That's the piece that doesn't seem to have, that I don't seem to have had integrated in any of these years and years of seeking exploration, studying, practicing. And I've been a coach and a therapist, and I was working with people and helping people, and it wasn't like it was all terrible,
People
but
get great results and do.
yeah, nice results, absolutely. Probably better results than I was getting, if I'm honest, because it's often how I think it works, right? I was able to see in other people more than I could sort of go
Seeing
to
yourself.
myself, really, to a certain extent. But yeah, the coming back to the body, it's and I think it's a lifelong process.
Mm.
I don't think it's ended for me. I'm not here going, and I am fully healed and I am fully, I'm a guru now of absolute healing. No, like I'm still seeing fragments of pieces of things that trigger me. I'm still seeing, you know, things that hurt, and I still have moments when the body will play up and I'll be like, what's that? And then I'll remember and I'll be, okay, you know,
Yeah,
and yeah.
the primary pain that drove, I would imagine, the collapse.
Mm.
How's your relationship with that?
And yeah, it's actually quite emotional because I can see the beauty in it now. I can see what it was trying to do. I can see what it was there for. I don't, and this is the thing, I see this confusion in people, this hatred of the self, this like I hated how my body was. I hated it physically, I hated it emotionally, I hated what I just hated the feeling of it in every way. And to find love again on so many different levels for
Within
my,
the self,
yeah, it's
for the body and within the self.
the body and the self. And that's extended into loving my body physically more, loving my body, just because I realized I was so, it was like the body was like, it was like a separate thing. I was like, this is a thing I would have cut it off at some points if I could, you know, and to kind of really reunify with the body and really be able to hear its wisdom and soften into that place and slow down. That was a big thing for me, Shauna, to slow down to what it was trying to show me.
Yeah, but it's quite radical because you're told on one hand, be out here, be out here, be out here, oneness and greatness and beautiful. But
Mm.
but it's quite radical to do the opposite of what you're taught and then to find comfort and peace
Yeah.
and ease and happiness and joy there in the thing
Yeah.
that you weren't ever allowed to go near, in the
Yeah.
thing that was too unsafe, in the thing that gave you panic attacks, in the thing that hurt you so badly, in the vessel that held all the pain, to turn
Mm.
towards that and to be able to comfort it and be with it and then work through it and work through that. That's radical.
It's huge. It's absolutely huge. And that, yeah, that's what this does. That's why it's so beautiful. That's why I trained in it. That's why.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
and that's what you're helping others with, I would imagine, at this
Yeah.
moment. So, you know, for people that are listening that are caught in the the world of spiritualness
Mm.
and are using it to bypass, but
Mhm.
have a question or have a desire or seeking or know those beginnings, those beginning journeys when you're turning to, that you have to turn toward yourself.
Mm.
What would be your advice, given your professional understanding, given your personal understanding, as the
And I think just to quickly just say something as well on that is that actually it not even in the spiritual thing, like anyone who is just seeking something, right? Like they may not have even gone down that road yet, perhaps, or I think it's anyone who's seeking, but particularly, yeah, particularly people who have tried that and feel like they failed. I just want to say you haven't failed. You are not broken.
Mhm.
And this is the irony, because a big part of the spiritual teachings is that you are not broken. And that's the bit I loved. But that's not how people are feeling, despite them saying that. So I want to, I suppose I'm saying you're not broken, but I'm saying you're not broken if spirituality hasn't like worked for you. You're not broken if this thing, because it wasn't supposed to do that. It wasn't a healing modality. It was never a healing modality. Spirituality, the understanding of non-duality is the understanding potentially of how life operates at the bigger level, but it was never a healing modality, but it's been turned into one somehow, or
Yeah.
expected to be one. And actually for healing to occur, we it comes from the body, it comes from within, it comes from a very different place. And to kind of reunify with the body, with your vessel, that we know that we know that if we think of it licking a lemon, we get a reaction. We know how much we are connected to the body. Do you know what I mean? But that's the place, and that's what I want to say. There's so much safety and beauty and wisdom in the body that you just don't have the capacity to see yet, but it's there, and I know it's there,
Wow.
and I've experienced it
And
myself.
we don't have to throw the baby out with the
You
bathwater.
don't have
We
to.
don't have we don't have to ridicule everything that you've known. You can bring that with you.
Yeah, this is it. I have I have love for everyone who taught me anything that I've understood about this. I'm not claiming to be better than anyone. I'm not claiming to know more. I'm just saying, yeah, certain things are just being used by certain people in the wrong way. And that's not necessarily even the teacher's fault, Shauna.
No.
Sometimes questionable, but sometimes it's not that, it's the way it's interpreted by the systems of the people who are in need, who are seeking, who want it to be the answer so badly for the
Because
pain.
there's no other answers.
No
And
other
maybe
answer.
and maybe spirituality is in a long list of things that have been tried, and this feels like the most gorgeous part, so I want to hold on to it.
And I've had this oneness experience, or even for some people, I've done a plant medicine experience, and I've had this beautiful unity and this seeing of like truth and reality and behind the matrix. But then I come back into my normal life, and I don't know where to put that.
I come back into my body
Come back into my body.
that holds the
Yeah.
pain of the
And
past.
now it's even harder because I'm like, I want this experience that was
Yes.
beautiful and gorgeous. I don't want this experience.
Yeah. And what we're saying is, I think what the both of us are saying,
Mm.
is that there is room for it all,
Yes.
and there is. But I love that because
Mm.
I think you know, every modality has its difficulty,
Mm.
including my own.
Mhm.
And I think if we profess that it's the answer,
Mm.
then we are not really, then we're operating at some cultic level, that we're trying to push people into a way of being that's not
Yeah.
really helpful to anybody.
And that's so important actually, because when I first was starting to investigate the training and doing training with you, my worry was learning a method. My worry was learning something that might feel limiting or feel like I couldn't move outside of, or feel was like touted as the answer to everything. And although for me, INCORE is the most brilliant methodology I've ever come across, ever, 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 I love the fact that I can integrate other things kind of with it.
Oh,
It's not, you know, you're not holding it in that way that you kind of, it's this way or the highway. It's like it's, and that's what I love. And that's what really, because I was scared, Shauna, after being in different communities and different narrow-minded ways of being, if you like, although claiming to be expansive, it was actually quite narrow
yeah.
and limiting.
I do think that there is an insecurity in that.
Mm.
I do think that there's, you know, does every model have its limitations?
Has
100%.
to, it has to. How can it not?
You know, is there any model that is the answer? Is there
Mm.
models that get closer? Yes, I think we're close. Do
Mm.
I think we have to be the only thing that you know? I do I, you know, do I love the idea that you can pull spiritual practices towards it, breath work towards it,
Mm.
anything that anchors, anything that creates the opposite, anything that helps reconsolidate, anything that adds to
Build capacity and
builds
build
capacity.
context. Yeah,
Listen, it all works in a beautiful togetherness.
yeah, I
And
agree. And that's what I really loved. And that's what I loved about probably one of the first meetings that I had with you, when you pretty much said that. And I was like, okay,
I
I'm
can
okay.
break. I don't have to be on this narrow-minded,
Yeah.
because the healing isn't that way. And if anybody's listening to this, I hope that, you know, if you're caught in that world of spiritual bypass, and if you're caught in that world where you're trying to dip your toe, or you're trying to hold on to your spiritual practices and not lose them, but maybe return to the body, then,
Yeah.
you know,
And that as well, I was just thinking that then, Sean, it was just bringing to mind the things that I would use to try and do, right? So all the feelings in my body, a lot of my core stuff was around abandonment and deep disconnection and the
hence
idea.
hence the super hyper arousal. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And things that would come up in things like friendships and relationships and work things, where I'd just be scrabbling, and then I'd be like, right, I need to journal about this, or I need to do some um a practice around this, or I need to do breath work so that I'm calm again, or I need to eat certain things so that I don't trigger myself anymore. And all of those things, again, they have their place. I love breath work. I love healthy eating. Actually really love tapping sometimes, things like that. But I was doing it all in a way, in a scrabble. I was doing it in a way of like,
Away from the primary pain.
away from the pain. That's it, exactly. And I think innocently and beautifully, that's what a lot of people are doing.
And
And
what we're saying is that the pain in and of itself can be arrived at, and you can still hold on to your practices.
yes,
You can
absolutely.
still hold on to your way of being. You can
Mhm.
still hold on to this sense of who you are and
Mhm.
all of these gorgeous practices. And that is no trouble whatsoever. That
And
we're
it will infuse them with more of your essence, actually. You know, doing breath work from that place is a very different experience to doing breath work because I need to calm down, you
yes,
know.
because I need to get away from the primary pain. I
Yeah,
need
yeah.
to do it. Yeah, because it's really interesting. I mean, you talk about this. Guess what I need to do more of?
Mm.
Breath work. Guess what I need to do more of? Meditation. Guess what I need to do more of? Gratitude and oneness.
Yeah,
I
and
need
that's
to be
brilliant
better at that.
from the healed place, from the
Yes.
place of that's a beautiful expression of self in the world, isn't it? But it comes from a very different place, and we're doing it desperately trying to get away from pain. You know, it's
And so I've arrived at the place that you started at.
yeah.
You know that place as
That's
well.
what that's what I've often said about you, Shauna, when I've talked about you with others, is that we've almost come, you and I have come from, I'm doing hand actions again, you and
Yes.
I have come from kind of different places, but kind of found this, it's
Yeah.
almost, wow,
Yeah.
it's that seeing
And
it.
And I
Really.
love that I'm learning about these practices, and I'm learning about gratitude, and I'm learning about,
Mm.
I have a wonderful, guess what, new spiritual director in my life.
Ooh.
Ooh, all of that to say,
Mm.
is there space for it all, and that we do not need to claim or stake a control in any space, and that if people are coming listening to this podcast, then maybe breathe a little bit.
Absolutely.
If you're in pain and it's emotional pain and it's in the body, you can return to that and return to the oneness.
Yeah.
And I am not the speciality in spiritualness. I'm only getting my new spiritual shoes on me. Um, but you are, and if anybody is inspired by your own story, Ali, and the way that you articulate yourself, which I just think is so beautiful and soft and gentle and gorgeous, and just to say that Ali is a practitioner, a specialist, and she's available on our website very soon. I think our new website's coming soon, but we'll link everything that we've talked about to the show notes. So
Amazing.
and if people aren't coming at this podcast from that in the spiritual world and looking to go towards their body, but they're interested in the three principles and they're interested in non-duality, we'll also do those links as well down
Mm.
there so that you can see all of the work and see
Yeah.
how all of this might, if you're maybe like me and you're coming at it from the other way and you've done a good chunk of your healing and you want to learn about how to be closer to oneness, then we'll put all of that in
Mm.
here together. How does that sound? Does that sound like, was that fruitful enough for you, Ali?
Yeah. Yeah. Lovely, lovely conversation. Thank you.
Gorgeous. Thank you so much. It's just really clarifying also for me. So in my spiritual practice is to go off to a bath after this, and maybe I'm no joking, have the candles lit and maybe do some nice meditation. I hope
Lovely.
wherever you're at, from listening to this podcast, it has given you some clarity, as we always try to do. Getting to the core is our intentionality, but our intentionality today was to really talk about being in the body whilst bringing your spiritual practices alongside. I hope we have made that intention come true or clear, or we've met that intention. If you've anything to say or any you want to reach out, you know how to do that. All the details will be in the podcast underneath this. Thank you, my love. Thank you, Ali.
Thank you.
All the best. Thank you so much, and it was so gorgeous sharing this time with you.